Hey folks, welcome to the Unsung Podcast. I am your host, Mark Fraser, and I am joined by Mr.
I mean, you should know by now. It's almost 4 years.
I forgot his name again. I can't believe it. Mr. Christopher Cusack, whose voice you just heard there. David is no longer with us. No, yes, he's still with us. He's just no longer on the show at the moment. He's currently exploring the Arctic. So we've got some more guests on, and they are. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Barbara Mendes-George.
I am Frank James.
And where are you from? I don't mean podcast-wise.
Wait a minute. Why are we using Sunday names? Is this a very formal occasion?
I was going to say Fran, but apparently it's a full name for it.
Yeah, everything's very cagey and tentative. I think we're not really sure how this is going to go because there may be some concern over certain people's reactions to the band that's been chosen. So it's all a little bit, yeah. As I knew you guys as Fran and Babs.
Well, yeah, I mean, we are Fran and Babs, and we are the co-hosts of the Over Underrated Music podcast, as well as being Fran from, what do you say, Fran? Southampton?
Never.
Bournemouth?
Oh, I'd never say Southampton.
No?
Because the rivals were Bournemouth.
Oh, sorry, still not knowledgeable enough about the
Dorset,
area.
Bournemouth, England. There you go.
I'm a bit more complicated because I am originally from Portugal, but I grew up in England, but I'm currently speaking to you from Brussels, Belgium. 1 hour later.
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely.
Apologies.
Mark's internet's so bad he's probably just about the same time as you.
Join us, Mark. But yeah, so the Over Underrated podcast is also a podcast where sometimes there are contentious opinions. So basically, Fran, me, or a guest, we think of a topic like a place or a genre, and then we pick a band that one of us or society thinks is overrated and another one which is underrated. And yeah, then we make some playlists, kind of arguing our point to see, you know, is this artist brilliant or terrible, and try and convince each other that we're correct. And we are constantly trying to push our opinions on each other with some success, but not always.
Yeah, I noticed with interest some of your recent stuff. You had Ryan Schaff, who we've also done a show with, and Ryan had picked L7 as being underrated and Pearl Jam as being overrated.
Absolutely.
But that's the gist of your show. I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners will really dig it as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope so. But the good thing about Ryan is, so he actually came on to defend Pearl Jam. So this is also something you can do. If you really like an artist, even though they're very famous like Pearl Jam, you can come on and defend them. So Fran and I were not such big Pearl Jam fans, and I think he chipped away a little bit at our opinions there.
So you are today's Ryan Schaff then?
I will do my best. I mean, Ryan, I've also guested on Ryan's podcast. We had a deep academic chat about Dry by PJ Harvey, so I can only hope to be as good as Ryan.
Oh, we've had one of those as well. That's good. Yeah. I don't envy him trying to defend Pearl Jam, but then again, I don't envy you guys trying to defend who you've chosen for today's show. And that would be,
we're doing Muse, and the album is Origin of Symmetry.
I'm having a very muted reaction to that, Mark. Do you want?
I don't know when to react.
No, so we've got a history of covering bigger acts. But I mean, it's part of the remit, I guess, because as much as Unsung was about trying to elevate some fairly unknown, sometimes very unknown acts, it is also, about fishing through the back catalogue of artists. We've done Weezer, for example. Mark picked a hellish album by them.
That's totally wrong. You know that's incorrect.
So yeah, this is terrain we've covered before, and I think most people's reactions to Origin of Symmetry is pretty positive. I know that one of our co-hosts, Vicky, got in touch as soon as she found out we were doing it, and she was like, I mean, that's a fucking great album. That's a great album. And she's like, the weird thing is I haven't thought about that in 15 years, but the first thought I have is very positive.
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with Muse is, let's say, patchy, because I was absolutely obsessed with them as a teenager. So I actually saw them live at a free concert in Luxembourg, where I grew up. Free, as well as Sneaker Pimps and Dandy Warhols were also on the bill, but we missed them completely. And then, I've seen them live quite a few times, and they are really good. And I think it was 2002, so it was a year after Origin of Symmetry had been released. So we bought that, we bought Showbiz, and then kind of Hullabaloo came out, and then I was like fully fledged Muse fan. And, you know, a few people around me were, like one of my best friends from school, she was so into Muse that she was a moderator on their website in the early 2000s. But then, yes.
She isn't the person behind the Muse wiki, is she?
No. No,
Because
it was like in the forum age, you know, when there was like a little chat room within the Muse website and lots of enthusiastic people.
One of my friends met his wife when he was on the Whole forum, I believe.
There we go.
But yeah, I mean, I think Muse must be the first band that we've covered that have their own wiki, right, Mark?
We haven't done Jimmy Eat World yet, so yeah, they would be the first band with their own.
Really? Jimmy Eat World? I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, their fans
did not expect that.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously not as big as Muse, but...
No, we've done Metallica. We did St. Anger.
Yeah, we did St. Anger.
There is a band you're also forgetting that Manson also have their own wiki.
Manson have a wiki?
Their Manson fans are ridiculously hardcore. Believe me, I used to be one of them.
Wow. I mean, that's got to fit on a very small drive, surely. I'm amazed. I mean, I can only think of one Manson tune.
Well, you're going to have to look out in season 3 because they're going to be one of the bands we're discussing. Fran and another hardcore fan, and I kind of just sat there and let it wash over me.
They're one of those 90s bands who had like a number one album, and now people only know one song. It's a weird thing.
Like Dark Star.
I raised them higher than Dark Star.
I don't know about that. Okay, well, we were meant to do this a couple of days ago as well, so just full disclosure, and I unfortunately had a terrible migraine, so everybody has agreed to postpone, hence why we're doing it now. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that it was a week of listening to music gave me that terrible migraine. So whilst I'm apologising, I do sort of blame you. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about a band that are just so absolutely fucking enormous. They have their own wiki. They're ubiquitous in TV advertising. You get your work cut out, I think, to make this one stick. But as always, I think we'll probably do a little bit of due diligence in this to get us rolling. So Muse, 1994, formed in Devon, just along the coast for you then, Fran. I always associated Muse with Wales for some reason.
Really? I know that they were banned by the mayor of Tynemouth for a little bit because Matt described it as being the drug capital of Devon. Before they then became massive and then suddenly, come back, we love you, Muse, we love you.
Matt Bellamy, Chris Wolstenholme and Dominic Howard. One of those bands as well, one of the rare bands that we cover where it's been the original lineup all the way through, which you kind of love to see, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's a nice thing.
Absolutely, and so rare. And because we recorded a Radiohead episode recently, we made that point as well. Radiohead and U2, I think, two of the bands that you think of as well in that category.
Dominic was originally in a band called, fucking hell, what a name, Carnage Mayhem, which I believe that Matt Bellamy auditioned for vocals. Then Chris joined. Chris was originally a drummer, switched to bass, and then they went through a few names, including the fantastic Gothic Plague and Rocket Baby Dolls. I'm guessing that Gothic Plague was, Carnage Mayhem, Gothic Plague sounds like some kind of weird Cure black metal thing.
I was going to say, emo before emo. Is what it sounds like.
Emo but with makeup on, that kind of like AFI thing. The Rocket Baby Dolls just makes me think of like Rachel Stamp or maybe the Manic Street Preachers early on, something like that.
Yeah.
One thing that really caught me, like doing the basics in this, the wiki says 1994 Rocket Baby Dolls won a local battle of the bands, smashing their equipment in the process. Bellamy said it was a real shock, a massive shock. After that, we started taking ourselves seriously. The band quit their jobs, changed their name to Muse, and moved away from Tynemouth. Who the fuck decides to go pro after winning a battle of the bands in Devon?
How good were the bands playing against in Tynemouth, to be fair?
That is incredibly hubristic. Wow. Yeah, guys, we are literally the best band in Tynemouth.
But I mean, that is Matt Bellamy all over, you know. I remember him saying, like, a lot of people play the tortured rock star act, but, I played sport. I had girlfriends when I was at school, and it's like, all right, Matt, okay. Like, no one was asking you, but sure, if you want to make that point.
Here's the son of a guitar player, isn't he? Like, his dad was in the Tornadoes, who did Telstar, which was a number one hit. So maybe he's got a little bit of an ego from his father, maybe.
Matt Bellamy, an ego, never.
What sport did Matt Bellamy do? Was he a fucking jockey? Or a cox or something? He's like, guy's 5'6".
I will hear nothing against short kings, excuse me.
I think he did sensible soccer was probably his main sport.
I remember hearing about Muse very early on, touring about with bleach blonde hair, doing multiple Nirvana covers a night. I think they were actually pretty well known. In fact, I've definitely seen Matt Bellamy comment on this for doing a cover of Territorial Pissings, because quite early on they were a band that became notorious for smashing their kit up and causing a bit of a fuss. And my actual personal first almost brush with Muse was, and please don't hold this against me, I bought a ticket to go and see Feeder and Everclear at the venue in Edinburgh, and the opening act that night was going to be Muse.
Fucking Everclear. Jesus.
I've not heard that name for a long, long time.
There's a reason for that.
Babs, remember Everclear? Was that before your time?
No, I was thinking, I don't think I've ever heard of Everclear.
You have.
Am I missing out?
Fun little trip ahead of you. Yeah, we'll go there another day. But to give it some context, to give it some more context, like Muse, I mean, we said started in 94, but they were really kind of getting well known. Showbiz was 99, but they started to get a bit more notoriety around 2000, 2001, which is about the same time as bands like My Vitriol, Vex Red, Cooper Temple Claws.
A killer key change is all you'll ever need. Who needs enemies when you got friends? Now you're time.
In the early years, they toured with Skunk and Nancy, Feeder, Everclear, Foo Fighters twice, I believe, quite early on. They supported Live, I think, in one of their first big kind of arena tours, or I don't know if it quite qualifies as arena. And I think first impressions probably count here as well. So, I mean, Muse, as I said, Vicky, she felt this is a good choice of an album in terms of the album on its own merits. Muse have some good riffs. They have the odd amazing hook. I think actually for me that's basically the frustrating fact around them. You know, that they managed to do that despite all the pomp and the sometimes quite grating falsettos and the grandstanding, that they do have quite a tangible rock soul that some of the other bands they got compared with didn't. They're certainly a lot heavier than the likes of Radiohead, which was the most common comparison thrown at them. I think early on I loved, and I still do actually admire them for that original member thing and the power trio. They fitted in a category with Placebo for me at that time, which was, you know, quite a modest lineup, but a big noise from really talented players, people that knew how to work as a trio really well and take up as much sonic space as possible. You know, they are a really impressive group of musicians. They're also, as I said, wildly successful. Was it over 20 million global sales, I think, so far? Supermassive Black Hole's their biggest UK hit at number 4. They've had 5 number 1 albums, and this one got to number 3. So I guess without relying too much on notes, what are just your gut feelings about Muse, Mark?
Well, I really got into Muse because the first ever time I started playing music with people, one of the guys was really into showbiz, and I fell in love with the song Monster Museum. And then Origin of Symmetry came out. I remember buying that record when it came out, actually, and I was really impressed by it. Bearing in mind, I was like, what would have been? I would have been 16 at the time when that came out. So I was like, fuck, these guys are going to be great, right? And then a lot can happen in 3 years, especially when you're 16, right? You grow up really quickly. And when Absolution came out, I tried to love it. It's got a few good singles on it. We'll talk about the albums in a wee second.
Give me your heart and your soul, and I'm breaking out.
But it never really grabbed me, and then it kind of just fell off a cliff for me, really. But I'm really glad this band exists. if I'm honest. Like, I'm glad a band like this is still kicking about. I'd rather listen to this band any day of the week over Snow Patrol. There's a lot of things to hate about them, and I do hate a lot of things about them, but the bands like this are so rare now, and the fact they're still huge, like massive, I think is an anomaly in this day and age. So, not a huge fan of them, but I'm glad they exist. Like, so glad they exist, because they can do whatever the fuck they want, and people will buy it, and they'll play massive shows, you know. And I think that's kind of heartening.
So we're obviously going to do a detailed dissection of the record itself later on, but Fran and Babs, you know, because I know you both debated what you were going to bring to the table for this show. What was it that sold you in this, and why is it this era of the band? Where were you guys personally when this came into your life?
Personally, I was not a fan of Showbiz, and I found Radiohead really fucking annoying. I thought they were just, a Radiohead rip-off, and I dismissed them completely until I heard Plug and Baby, and that was literally a reset button, and as soon as I heard that riff, it was, oh, this is the new Muse. And then I heard Newborn, and I became, okay, I like this. This is for me. But that Showbiz was maybe their teenage angst band, and now they've become, a mature rock and roll band. And then I think I bought the album, and I saw them at Reading 2002, which was like one of their pinnacle gigs. And then I loved Hullabaloo, and I loved that era, and that's when I fell into in love with this period of Muse. Babs, how about you?
Yeah, so as mentioned, 2002 was when I got into them, and I don't really know the order that I heard them in. I don't know if we got Showbiz first, then Origin of Symmetry or not. But yeah, we saw them live, and we're like, well, this random English band is bloody amazing. And then I bought Showbiz, Origin of Symmetry, Hullabaloo. I came out, and I think Hullabaloo it's quite audacious for your third album to be a collection of B-sides, rarities, and a live album. But I think it makes sense given how popular they were and how good a live band they are. Absolution for me, it was like an album that I was waiting for by that point, because it came out in 2003. So I felt about Absolution like, okay, this is taking a different direction, but I still like it. Then Black Holes and Revelations, I was like, okay, I like half of this album. But not the rest of it. And then basically, after Harp, I have not listened to a single song of theirs that I like. So I think it's the band I have the most conflicting relationship with, because Muse and Radiohead were my two favourite bands as a teenager. So yeah, in 2002, I was, how old was I? Oh my God, I can't tell. I was 14, 15. So prime teenage snob music years. And Radiohead, similarly, later Radiohead, I'm not such a big fan of, but there's still stuff in later Radiohead that I can appreciate. Every single time I try to go to later Muse, I'm like, why? What have you done? What is this shit stadium rock? So it was really interesting to kind of actually go back and listen to it and kind of remind myself why I fell in love with them in the first place. And is Origin of Symmetry my favourite album? I think so. I think it is my favourite album, and one of my favourite albums of all time.
I would say that I think Absolution is a better album, but because that is the number one, and we're doing more like unsung, and the reason that also this album wasn't released in America, the American label refused to release it. So the fact that if we're doing like the world podcast for audience in the UK, people know, but no one in America ever heard, and to this day it's not officially been released in America. So therefore I think Absolution is maybe their first massive album, and this is like the album just before they became gigantic Muse.
It's strange because, I mean, they were touring America before their first album. I mean, Muse very, very early on played across the pond. In fact, I think Muse had played France multiple times in America, at least once, maybe twice, before they ever came to Scotland. That's literally like how far and wide they were travelling at that time. So they were trying to establish themselves. Certainly, as you say, it doesn't seem like it took in the early days. There was also something Mark said when he first sort of mentioned what you'd chosen to me. He immediately drew an analogy with Queen, and I was really kind of perplexed. I was like, Queen? I was like, no, Radiohead, surely, that everyone compares Muse to. And Babs, as you're saying, I had tuned right out of this band for the last, debatably 4 albums, but certainly 3 albums. Only in the course of this have I realised why Mark said Queen. And Mark, hats off to you. You're right. But we'll get to that in due course. But that really kind of caught me off guard, because that was not a part of their evolution that I'd really been aware of. And the impression I was left with, and okay, maybe it's not coming from a particularly charitable place, but was that they're a band that sat one day and said, what are we going to do next? Well, the only direction really open to us is to try and write big, memorable, enduring hits a la Queen, from sort of almost like Greatest Hits 3 kind of era, where there were electronics and everything was really overblown. And so it's kind of, that they're a strange act. That they've become something that I've had to digest very quickly, and as well as giving me a headache, they've given me a wee bit of indigestion.
But I think Matt Bellamy said that Queen are the best rock band of all time.
I don't disagree with him on that, by the way.
Shock.
I do, but that's for another time. But what was interesting, re-listening to Origin of Symmetry with kind of analysis in mind, was the blend of classical and rock. And that's what Queen do as well. It's quiet, it's loud, it's fucking heavy guitars and synthy strings. It's kind of everything in the kitchen sink. And I was thinking, listening to this album, I'm like, I think this album is fantastic, but it surprises me that so many other people do, because it shouldn't be as accessible as it is.
But can I just say, that's exactly how I felt a few weeks ago when we talked about AM by Arctic Monkeys. Yeah. I was like, I don't understand why this album's so big. Like, how is this a hit single? Like, it's so slow and grungy. And anyway, so I'm with you on that. It is surprising, and sometimes it's encouraging, because sometimes you think, okay, not everybody's underestimating the intelligence of the audience, and the audience are sort of rewarding them in a way that you maybe wouldn't have anticipated.
I think Origin of Symmetry, I think Matt said that he was using Rage Against the Machine and Rachmaninoff and making an album. And you can see it completely. And doing some research, I didn't know how much he was ripping off Rachmaninoff and Bach. It's literally just I'll take that and literally put it into my album. And then later on, they became a studio band, and it's all the Queen backing vocals and Pomp fending and once they lost their amazing riffs and stuff, I moved on from Muse. It wasn't for me anymore.
They were getting some massive props for their riffs at this kind of era, weren't they? I mean, I think the riff from Plug-in Baby, certainly, but also Newborn, I think they picked up various awards at various sort of guitar magazines and things like that at the time. I mean, they were really interesting. He was obviously inspired. I mean, he talks about Hendrix and Tom Morello, but also I think their choice of tone, because this is the album where Muse became a Kerrang band and not an NME band. Yeah. They kind of clearly sort of kicked off the side of the pool with the riff in Newborn. It was a very deliberate attempt to sort of like demarcate themselves and distance themselves from some of the kind of glib Radiohead comparisons that were still kind of lingering about. And I do agree with you about Showbiz. It feels almost a wee bit of a lack of identity. We'll talk about it, but a wee bit of a lack of identity, a wee bit of pressure from whoever at Mushroom, I think it was, that put it out, who said, do this and you'll probably sell a lot of records on the back of this other band's success. But they seem to kind of make a stab at a little bit of their own identity in this one. So it is an interesting choice.
I just want to quickly say that I disagree with you on Showbiz, and I'm glad, because I have a literal quote that talks about how the DNA of Origin of Symmetry comes from Showbiz. So look forward to it.
Okay.
Fran's shaking his head already, but yeah.
There's a couple of really interesting bits of insight I think that we should give into, like again, the hubris and the pomposity of Muse, which I think is a big part of their brand. Sometimes it feels like it's built in, other times it feels like it's a little bit inadvertent. They are, as far as I'm aware, the only band that have successfully sued both Nestle and Celine Dion.
I'd forgotten about Celine Dion. Yes.
For why? Why?
Two of the world's great evils. Nestle, I believe, used one of their songs in a campaign without their permission, and Celine Dion attempted to call a tour or a series of concerts Muse, I think, and they shut that shit down. I think the paycheck was about 50,000 they sued her for, or something like that. Matt Bellamy called his son Bing.
Yeah, I did read about why though. Did you see this?
No, I assumed it was some sort of anti-Google Skynet.
No, it's because I think Bingham, Goldie Hawn's maiden name or something like that. Hang on, I did look this up, but I didn't. Bingham Bellamy. That is quite a name. But yeah, I also thought, like, what's he talking about? Yeah.
I mean, it's better than like a vast or something, isn't it, really? So you can imagine him naming a son after.
Actually, I think I know why that was. You might have just said it, I'm sorry, it was a wee bit crackly, but it's because Kate Hudson is Goldie Hawn's daughter. Is that not why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is an oft neglected fact, is that Matt Bellamy hooked up with Kate Hudson for quite a time. A testament, I think, to the ridiculous power of being a rock star.
I don't like this anti-Matt Bellamy propaganda going around here. I see, my first memory of Matt Bellamy was him in the Bliss video with the red hair falling, and I was like, who is this mysterious man? And he's definitely not, let's say, like, conventionally attractive, but there's a sparkle in his eye, and there's a cheek, and there's, I think, a confidence and a charisma, which I think is quite attractive.
Did you enjoy his spiky hairstyle back in that day?
I absolutely did. I absolutely enjoyed going through the photos of him with blonde hair, with blue hair, with red hair in this period. So thanks,
I think
guys.
that it's a lovely thought that a guy from Tynemouth can be dating Hollywood royalty.
His new wife is also
beautiful.
a model, by the way. So he keeps it up.
I think he looks like a Lego man that someone tried to scratch the face off.
So harsh.
And, well, here's the thing, right? In 2010, Matt Bellamy actually won Hottest Male Award at the Shockwaves NME Awards, beating out, get this, Alex Turner of Arctic Monkeys, Liam Gallagher, and Be Still My Beating Heart, Green Day's Billy Joe Armstrong.
Okay, I'd go for Billy Joe over Matt.
Hey, come on, like, I've got to say that I think both Dominic and Chris are better looking men than Matt Bellamy.
Dominic, yes. Dominic. Chris, he's a bit, I mean, I think Chris has something like 5 children. And
seven children.
Fucking hell, seriously.
He's probably had 2 since you last looked it up.
I was going to say, that's what else I heard about it. And yeah, there's some very funny stories about him not telling the parents at school who he was and then finding out kind of completely separately. But I feel like he has got a bit of a dad vibe about him, whereas Dom is a bit of a cheeky monkey.
Do the other 2 still live in the UK? Is it only him who's moved to LA?
I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. I'm my stalking days are. Another thing that's worthy of note: NME named Matt Bellamy the 14th greatest rock and roll hero of all time, ahead of the little-known John Lennon and Bob Dylan.
What
was that the enemy?
Yep.
Yeah, well, you can see this.
Incredibly relevant, zeitgeisty.
I'm sure Miles Kane was number 4 or something.
In 2008, I'm sure we all know this, Muse were awarded an honorary doctorate from the University of Plymouth for their contributions to music.
Why not?
Each and every member rendered a doctor for writing Plug-in Baby. And I mean, frankly, I think all of that goes to show that Muse are kind of fucking chancers. But we could be about to go off a little bit of a cliff here, because I want to go back to one of Mark's points, and it is that, you used the example of you'd rather listen to Muse than Snow Patrol. I get that. I agree to some extent. I certainly, musically, I mean, especially with this album, and bits and bobs of Absolution, and bits and bobs of Showbiz as well, musically they were a really interesting band, and they were taking chances, and they had some ideas that were a wee bit a bit too much, but they had other ideas that were really innovative. And I think, as I said, tonally, I think they took some big risks. I mean, as much as they talk about sounding like Tom Morello, there's moments in Muse albums where it sounds like they're trying to sound like gent music. They really go for some heavy, crunchy, sort of like strange metallic guitar tones, and it's pretty interesting. But there's an aspect to Muse that sticks in my throat so badly, right? And I'm sorry, Babs, it does somewhat relate to Matt Bellamy, and I can't get past it, and it's gonna form a significant part of this podcast now. So Muse have some really fucking horrendous patter. Okay, they have some really
that I can agree with.
Really horrendous patter, right? I mean, Muse to me are the musical equivalent of the film The Matrix. Okay, they're paranoid cyberpunk bollocks with the odd Rage Against the Machine riff.
I think that Matt would take that as a compliment, though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he would.
But yeah, by the way, that's me not even mentioning like a Messiah Complex and Black PVC. But I think Muse have charges to answer in the same way as, this is quite topical, I guess, I am curious to see how the new Matrix movie, which is coming soon at the time of recording, I'm curious to see how this handles this, because the Matrix, as we all know, is like a really big part of the lore around, the red pill and the white rabbit, and what actually bizarrely kind of metastasized into the alt-right and a lot of the men's rights movements.
Here it goes.
Yeah, this is, sorry, but this is a really, like, Muse are a very, very, very refined example of this, okay, because Muse court a lot of the same sort of tokenistic conspiratorial shit that I think sort of defines The Matrix. Now, it makes The Matrix, I love The Matrix, the original film, at least it's really enjoyable, but there is a lot that has resulted from that. We were, people dabbling with conspiracy stuff, it's even going back to X-Files. We were setting up a culture where there were these giant overarching conspiracy theories that, that never really used to be the case. Conspiracy theories were kind of ghettoized, and there was this one and there was that one, and then you got these giant meta-narratives that led to things like QAnon. And playing their own tiny part in this is Muse. These huge kind of overarching world government conspiracy theory things. And I think it's really interesting to actually analyse how far the band have gone down that road. So, assuming this is a trial, I've got 4 exhibits here, right? Exhibit A. Actually, this is taken from an interview in The Guardian. Matt Bellamy discusses Fox News presenter Glenn Beck's embrace of their 2009 album, The Resistance, and the use of their hit single Uprising in a whole bunch of right-wing conspiracy videos on YouTube. Matt said, in the US, the conspiracy theory subculture has been hijacked by the right to try take down people like Obama and put form right-wing libertarianism. Bellamy defines himself as a left-leaning libertarian, more in the realms of Noam Chomsky, in his own words, but he added that Uprising was requested by so many politicians in America for use in their rallies, and we turned them down on a regular basis. What I'm curious about is that Matt Bellamy seems either A, to want congratulated for turning them down, or B, slightly surprised. Like he's not aware of the fact that the things he says in his lyrics, the way his lyrical narratives progress, is so similar to so much of the narrative that emerges from especially the libertarian right in America. I think that's quite fascinating.
I'm not entirely surprised by that, if I'm totally honest, because although he says he's left-leaning, and I'm pretty sure he probably is, the politics in the songs are so hollow and vacuous that they're essentially quite apolitical, I think. You can apply them to anything. You can apply them to left or right.
It's glib.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very glib. It's almost childish at points, but that's assuming there are no consequences. And perhaps you could have forgiven that early on. Perhaps you could have forgiven that, way back, inverted commas, in early 2000s. Except in recent history, the consequences of this kind of messaging has been pretty firmly established. Especially since 2016 onwards, 2015 onwards. I mean, I would say Exhibit B, something that's he's quite notorious for. He was speaking to Colin Powell during the White House reception in 2012, and Matt says, I asked him about hollow point bullets. This was him talking to the NME, because Homeland Security had purchased millions of them. They explode when they hit you. I think they're banned under the Geneva Convention. This was widely reported in the conspiracy press. Now that's a quote. And the question was, why were they buying so many? And then Matt theorises, it looked like they were preparing for massive riots. And it's like, okay, a little bit of insight there. I don't know if you've seen those photos, by the way. It's him, Kate Hudson, George Clooney and Colin Powell at a White House reception in 2012.
I'd like to eavesdrop in that conversation. That'd be quite good.
Well, I mean, he's pretty upfront about it. I mean, he's reading the conspiracy press. Exhibit C, according to a site called Complete Music Update, which sounds legit. Matt has said back in 2006, I think it was, there was a document called Project for the New American Century. Well, actually, there definitely is a document called Project for the New American Century. It was made by a right-wing think tank in the United States, which he claims clearly says we need a new Pearl Harbor level event so we can have an excuse to invade the Middle East. And this all ties in to him claiming that 9/11 was a hoax.
Although he's gone back on that, apparently.
And then in 2012, he told the Metro, I think it was an interview with the Metro, I don't believe that anymore, although there are lots of questions to be answered regarding his 9/11 comments. He also said that he'd been trying to read from more credible sources.
Have we found out if he's a flat earther yet?
What's that guy, Bob? B.O.B.? Maybe he's doing a collaboration with him soon.
Yeah.
I think that's
He sang about.
I can just imagine Matt is very much an antisocial guy who sits in his white room and goes down a lot of YouTube wormholes. I can see him doing that. I always knew that, like, backstage he never spoke to any other bands. He never really speaks to the audience. He's very much like an eccentric loner, so you can see why sometimes he's a bit misguided with his information. But most of his lyrics I kind of thought was about bollocks and tech and stuff. I never really took much notice. I know Newborn is linked to the Matrix, apparently.
You have got a treat in store. So I've got one more quote and then I've prepared us a little game. All right. This doesn't happen often in this show, but I have prepared us a little game that I think you'll enjoy. Anyway, Exhibit D, which is debatably my favourite, is that Matt Bellamy thinks he's been abducted by aliens.
Or helicopters.
Well, he does concede it could have been a helicopter, but he was talking to Radio X. I may have been abducted. I saw this flashing light that was in the woodland, and it was really unusual at that time of night because it was like 1 a.m. I remember just waking up at home, and to this day I don't quite remember the journey from their home. He went on to admit that he doesn't know if it was a UFO. It might have been a helicopter or something, although being abducted by a helicopter is still worth mentioning. And that his judgment may have been compromised at the time, explaining, I was driving, so I definitely didn't drink anything. I'm not suggesting that at all, but I may have smoked something that was grown in Devon. Does anybody know what they grow in Devon?
Carrots.
Carrots? Shouldn't be smoking that.
Lemon. Drink cider from a lemon. So I'm thinking of the Feeder song. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm not breaking any new ground by saying that Matt Bellamy's prone to like flights of eccentricity, but what I think people underestimate is just quite how red-pilled he is on some issues. And I realise with the 9/11 thing, he rolled that back. But, you know, it's very likely as well that he rolled that back under pressure because that did not go down well.
The thing that's always interesting about bands, especially bands that fucking pack in their jobs, whatever jobs they had when they're really, really young and decided to pursue stardom from a very young age, is that they become suspended in adolescence, right? So, like, his opinions haven't really had that much time to evolve because his world is, like Fran just said, he just lives in a little bubble, a little shiny white room.
Yeah, he became a professional musician after winning one battle of the bands.
Yes, luck shone upon him. But one thing that I was thinking about is quite interesting is, like, he probably does have all the makings of an incel, but he's also probably one of the only and most well-known conspiracy theorists who's actually having sex with supermodels, which is pretty incredible when you think about it.
A Chad and a conspiracy theorist, yeah.
I don't know, I think Gavin McInnes has probably done that too. I just don't know if the supermodels consented to.
See, this is the thing, Chris. I basically totally agree with you on all of that. I think Matt Bellamy is the kind of guy who has the luxury to play devil's advocate and explore conspiracy theories without thinking of the consequences. And when doing my How Mental is Matt Bellamy research, I did find a quote where he says, the differential between the bubble we live in, which is ordinary life, and the reality out there is almost as heavy as what is being depicted in a film like The Matrix. It could make you puke to make that step towards finding out what's really going on. And it's like, I think, having grown up with Muse as well, probably when I was a teenager, I could be like, whoa, man, so deep. Like, so deep what he's saying. But now, we know about incels and we know about the men's rights movement. And yeah, like...
That's an amazing quote you just said, though, right? So it can make you puke to think about what's really going on.
Really going on.
Do you know who that sounds like? Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Right? So, how about we play a little game? Right, and this little game is called Muse or Alex Jones.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
I've got 16 quotes
16?
here. 16 quotes, and believe me, I had to cut that right down. That was tough. I did that grudgingly, okay? I'm going to read out a quote, and we're all going to keep score and try and guess who it was by, okay? So do you have a pen and paper?
Please tell me you've got
I have a Google Doc open.
Okay, and if you're listening to this, please take 2 seconds, pause this, get a bit of paper or some way to note this down, and keep your own score. And then we want some comments and some messages giving us your honest score. Really want to know the worst and the best results out of this. Okay, everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right. Quote number 1. To alter our course from tyranny to liberty, to defeat the corrupt elite, we must get past the puppets and confront the real power structure of the planet. Was that Muse or was that Alex Jones?
I'm going to say Muse.
Muse, Babs?
Alex Jones.
Mark?
Alex Jones.
The answer was Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Quote 2. You'll burn in hell. Yeah, you'll burn in hell for your sins. Was that Muse or Alex Jones? Fran?
I'm thinking Alex.
Babs?
I think that's a Muse lyric.
Mark?
I think that's Alex Jones.
That was Muse.
Oh.
What?
Oh.
What song?
Take a Bow from Black Holes and Revelations.
Burn in hell. Sorry.
So, quote 3. Are you a human drone? Are you a killing machine? I'm in control, motherfucker. Do you understand? Your mind is just a program and I'm the virus. I'm changing the station. I'll improve your thresholds. I'll turn you into a super drone and you will kill at my command and I won't be responsible. Fran, is that Alex Jones or Muse?
Well, Muse have a song called Drones, so I'm going to go for Muse.
Babs?
Muse for the same reason, yep.
I can just see Alex Jones' big red neck, like as he yells that into a fucking tiny microphone. So I'm going to say Alex Jones.
See, Mark, I'm with you, but it's Muse.
Oh man,
It's from Psycho from Drones. Okay, quote 4. War is overdue. The time has come for you to shoot your leaders down. Fran, Alex Jones or Muse?
Alex.
Alex Jones, Babs?
I'm going to say Alex Jones, but I'm not sure on that one.
Mark?
I'm going to say Muse.
It's Muse.
Oh, whoa. Shoot your leaders down? Bloody
War
hell.
is overdue. The time has come for you to shoot your leaders down. It's from Assassin from Black Holes and Revelations. Quote 5. If we start creating our own maps, our own world, our own vision, then there's no way for the cultural tyrants to program us. Is that Muse or is that Alex Jones?
Well, it's been heavy Muse recently, so I'm going to go for Alex.
I'm going to say Muse.
Mark?
No doubt Alex Jones. I've no doubt that's Alex Jones.
Alex Jones all the way. Yep. I mean, the fact that this is proven difficult must surely give everybody pause for thought already, right? Quote 6. But the public had so much freedom. They were so wealthy, even our poorest. They had no idea that they were replacing it with abject slavery. Muse or Alex Jones? Fran?
Alex.
I've got Muse again.
Yes.
That was Alex Jones.
Oh.
Oh. Okay.
That guy.
7. The age of cowardice is coming to an end. The age of men will return. Fran?
That has to be Muse.
Babs?
Yeah, I was going to say Muse as well.
Mark?
Oh no. I can't decide. I can.
Again, the age of cowardice is coming to an end. The age of men will return.
I can just see it ending with "and the water turning the frogs gay" and thinking it's Alex Jones. So I'm going to say Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. Quote 8. They'll try to push drugs that keep us all dumbed down and hope that we will never see the truth.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Mark?
Muse.
It is Muse.
Bloody hell. Yeah, this is hard.
How are our scores so far?
Can you just remind me, was number 6, was it Muse or not?
Number 6 was Alex Jones.
Alex Jones, okay.
I think I've got 4 out of 8.
That's not bad.
I've got 3.
Oh, and you're the Muse fan.
Indeed.
And you started so well.
I
as
did,
well.
yeah.
Mark?
I have 5.
Oh, shit. I think that's pure luck, to be honest. But we'll keep going. Okay, halfway. Wake to see your true emancipation as a fantasy. Policies have risen up and overcome the brave. Greatness dies, unsung and lost, invisible to history. Embedded spies brainwashing our children to be mean. You don't have long. I'm on to you. Fran?
I mean, that's hard to fit into a song. That has to be Alex, surely.
Babs?
The I'm on to you makes me think it's Alex.
Mark?
That I'm on to you makes me think it's Muse.
That was Muse.
Incredible.
That is from the song Supremacy on the Second Law.
Wow.
Wow.
To quote 10. Oh, fuck me. Parasites will be crushed. I can taste your weakness. Crushing, crushing, crushing.
Alex. No, Muse.
I'm going Muse as well.
Mark?
That has to be Alex Jones.
It's Alex Jones. Mark, you're fucking killing this.
I'm actually a subscriber to InfoWars.
You clearly are. Yeah. You must have been gutted about the Sandy Hook decision this week. Okay. Quote 11. If you're receiving this transmission, you are the resistance. Is that Muse or Alex Jones?
I mean, Muse have got a song called Resistance, so I'm going to hope it's the obvious answer and say Muse.
Same, Muse.
I think that's Alex Jones.
It's Alex Jones.
Wow. That is 8 in a row wrong for me.
Quote 12. That's destiny. That's will. That's striving. That's being a trailblazer and explore. Going into space, mathematics, quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe, it's all there. Life is fiery with its beauty, its incredible detail. Tuning into it, they want to shutter your mind. Unlock your human potential. Defeat the globalists who want to shutter your mind.
Muse.
I've said Alex Jones.
Mark?
Muse.
Babs, you just broke your losing streak. That's
Finally.
Alex Jones.
I thought it was a bit too long maybe for a song.
Yeah.
But it's so rhythmic as well, though. That was the thing. Okay, and...
Wait, hang on. Was that Alex Jones or was that Muse?
That was Alex Jones. You were bang wrong.
I was wrong.
Quote 13. Unlucky for some. There's no country left to love and cherish. It's gone. It's gone for good. It's you and me, babe, survivors, to hunt and gather memories of the great nation we were. Is that
Alex?
The Babe is really throwing me, but I'm going to say Muse.
I'm fairly sure that's Muse.
Fran? Sorry to say you're wrong. It is Muse.
Babe.
Does he say babe ever?
Apparently.
By the way, he says babe a lot, as I found out this week. Yeah.
Wow, what search engines were you using?
Pornhub?
Oh, that's an image I can never erase.
So, quote 14, almost there. That's a nasty taste coming up in my mouth. Tasting those globalists, I can taste their fear and their weakness. I taste metal, I taste blood.
Muse.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Now that I know that he says globalists.
I think I've hit your record, Babs.
Two more. Quote 15. Murder Africa. Invasion forces. Release us. Brad.
Alex.
Please let that be Alex.
Mark.
Muse.
It's Alex Jones.
Oh, thank God.
Murder Africa. What the? I mean, with an exclamation mark as well.
Of course.
And the last quote, I'm hungry for some unrest. I want to push this beyond a peaceful protest. I want to speak in a language that they'll understand.
Muse.
Muse, I think, yeah.
Muse. Pretty sure it is.
And everybody finishes on a win.
Okay.
That was Muse. And hopefully that was eye-opening. Fran, what was your score?
I got a 6.
Oh,
I got 8.
half marks. Mark,
11, 12.
double figures. Fucking hell, that's good. I also, just to roll that up, I prepared some bonus quotes here. Here's a belter from Alex. The reason there are so many gay people now is because it's a chemical warfare operation. I have the government documents where they said they're going to encourage homosexuality with chemicals so people don't have children.
Sure. Sure.
It's the fluoride, isn't it, in the water?
Yeah. And another one. When I think about all the children Hillary Clinton has personally murdered and chopped up and raped, I have zero fear standing up against her. Yeah, you heard me right. Hillary Clinton has personally murdered children. I just can't hold back the truth anymore. Hillary Clinton is one of the most vicious serial killers the planet's ever seen. Fuck me, man. The First Amendment's got a lot to answer for, right?
It's just I almost, to be honest, can't find it funny. Like when you hear about the Pizzagate scandal and just
it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm saying this very heavily layered with how much I fucking detest that, and it's like, I mean, that would make a really catchy chorus, though, right? Hey, on the flip of that, there's blaming both sides. Some Muse song names: Thought Contagion, Propaganda, JFK, The Globalist, we'll come back to that, Drones, Revolt, Supremacy, United States of Eurasia, MK Ultra, Unnatural Selection, Uprising, Exopolitics, Time is Running Out, Rule by Secrecy, Apocalypse Please. I mean, that is basically a YouTube playlist of QAnon.
that's an algorithm radicalizing you in 15 videos.
And one of the ones that really jumped out to me was, I'm sure you know, Babs, certainly the JFK song from Drones.
I know, genuinely, no, I don't. I'm waiting for you to tell me about it because I know fuck all about these up to 2009.
This was on their fairly recent album, Drones, which we'll talk about in the second part of the show. But
it is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence...
Here's the quote by JFK, which they've chosen to put to music. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It's a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. Now, that is a JFK quote, but that is a grotesquely decontextualised JFK quote about communism. Not about him confessing to some giant one world government thing. And if Matt Bellamy isn't aware of this, despite having read, conspiracist news sources, that is widely circulated as being one of the reasons that JFK was killed on conspiracy sites, because he was trying to go against the one world government and the globalists, which, by the way, is code for Jews, routinely on right-wing websites. I think that's incredibly tone deaf and naive on Matt's part, and I think what it really comes down to bring it back to the show is, okay, Matt Bellamy is not Tom DeLonge. I don't think Matt Bellamy is deranged. I think his thing about getting abducted by UFOs is very tongue-in-cheek, and I think even though maybe earlier on he may have held sort of earnest beliefs in these kind of things, a lot of us did. I mean, myself included. I used to be fascinated by that stuff in my late teens and my early 20s, and JFK. It was one of the most mind-blowing experiences when I found out that the JFK film by Oliver Stone was largely just fabricated by Oliver Stone. It wasn't based on the Warren Commission. That was something I was like, how can you just make up something that's not true and turn it into a film? That honestly blew my mind. And I think Bellamy's obviously saying a lot of stuff tongue-in-cheek, but there are two other key perspectives in that as I see it, and this will affect my overall appraisal of Muse. A bit like The Matrix, as I said, and evidenced by Glenn Beck trying to sort of unironically use their songs to soundtrack his own rants, a huge proportion of any audience, especially for a band as big as that, will just not get irony. Like the constant hammering on about things like one world governments and globalists and global conspiracies, especially that toxic term globalists and the Jewish connotations, anti-Semitic connotations, is like deeply problematic to me in a world where like those notions, especially decontextualized, send people down rabbit holes. And I think the second one is that all the anti-capitalist shtick that Muse come out with is a bit fucking rich because, well, to be blunt, Matt Bellamy is a bit fucking rich. The guy is valued, I think, at over $40 million personally. Like, who is more of a fucking globalist than a posh guy for Devon who plays arenas in Japan whenever he wants? Like, do we think for a minute that Matt Bellamy pays every penny of tax that he's meant to pay? Do you think, is he not a representative or a front for Warner Media, making them a fortune? Warner Media, who, by the way, merged with AT&T in May of this year. I think they've become a corporation that's values estimated at about 150 billion. I mean, Matt Bellamy is part of that. Shut the fuck up, Matt Bellamy. I mean, I get that they're a rock band, but all of this stuff does matter. What is this band about? What does it represent to people? And ultimately, I just feel like, ironically, if there's any profundity to be found in anything that Muse write, it's that all this stuff about false narratives, misdirection, global elites are no better illustrated than by Muse themselves. That they represent all those things and they're selling it back to people. It's a really hard thing for me to disentangle. So for all that I'm willing to admit that this album in particular is really, really interesting, there is an enormous hurdle, and I'm sure you've guessed that I've not cleared that hurdle when it comes to being able to sublimate all of these sort of like distasteful aspects of this band, not just the stupid, arrogant pretentiousness of it and the daft things about UFOs, but the kind of more sinister and slightly malignant side of this kind of like courting these things that 15 years ago perhaps you could say, okay, we didn't really realise the potential of that, but we certainly do now. Does that affect your perspective on this any, given that we're debating the merits of this?
I think that we both agree that we've barely listened to Muse in the past 15 years. So most of those albums we've not even given a time of day to. But what's interesting is that, like you're saying, from like Drones and Second Law, these songs are from, they're the biggest hits in America. So it's interesting that these songs,
that's a good point,
are massive in America, more so than they were back when Origin of Symmetry and Absolution, which are the albums I love, were ever popular.
I would defend the argument of the whole Matt Bellamy's railing against capitalism, but he's a capitalist. Well, isn't every big rock star? Are we going to say that to every big rock star? And we don't know if he's avoiding tax, although it wouldn't surprise me. But I would hold my judgment there. But on what Muse talk about, I pretty much agree with you, Chris. But I think both Fran and I don't really pay much attention to lyrics, right? So when I got into Muse, I really wasn't paying attention to lyrics, and I got into Muse at the same time as my mum, who's like my biggest musical influence. She's the one who got me into Muse and Radiohead. And I remember her being like, Muse are a great band, but what the fuck are they singing about? And I think when it comes to Origin of Symmetry, it is kind of vague enough that you can interpret it in so many different ways. I mean, I've gone through and interpreted, and I'm like, is this about fucking an alien? Is this about robots? I have no idea. But
what song is about fucking an alien?
Plug and Baby. Could be.
Oh my god, that makes it better.
Yeah,
that does make it better.
That's what I would say. I think it's definitely true that as Muse went on, it definitely got more explicitly political and explicitly conspiratorial, if that's a word.
Conspiratorial.
Thank you. I work in communications. I should know better. But because I'm a fan of less political Muse, it doesn't really bother me, because I just don't, as in on a personal level, it might bother me on a societal level, but it doesn't really impact me listening to their music, because he's falsettoing away, and I can disengage with that in a way that actually, maybe with other bands I can't, but because I got into them before Drones and Psycho and whatever, like even Exopolitics, it's an Apocalypse Please, I feel like it's tangential enough that it doesn't bother me too much. But I love a guy's music, do not want to listen to the guy's opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's never been renowned as being one of the world's greatest poets. People, I don't think, will go to Muse because of the lyrics first. I think it's all about the music. And for me, it was all about the music. Like, doing this podcast was the first time I've really given much attention to any of the lyrics in Origin of Symmetry. To me, it was just, nonsense about space dementia. I was like, okay, fair enough, mate. But nice riff.
I think it's actually really interesting to bring up Radiohead again, though, Babs, because they are a band who maybe to some extent echo some of the sentiments of Muse songs, but their approach to dealing with it and their overall approach to their business in general seems much more tactful and self-aware.
Even though Tom Yorker's now going out with a supermodel as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can't begrudge him that. But I think the fact that Radiohead's take on international finance and these kind of things is so nuanced, and there's definitely allegations of hypocrisy that can be levelled at them as well, of course, but they at least approach the subject with a little bit of humility, I think, and a little bit of knowledge. They don't throw these big clumsy cliches at it and sort of sell them to young teenagers. You don't get the impression that Radiohead market to 14 and 15-year-olds who have just discovered Chomsky and 4chan, and Muse unfortunately seem to be really pandering to that audience. And it's all very well Matt saying he's a left-leaning libertarian, but his lyrics and his themes as illustrated often run parallel to a lot of the themes of right-leaning libertarians, and far worse than right-leaning libertarians. That doesn't necessarily work as a get-out for me, I mean, Muse just don't seem really interested in addressing that. As I said, I'm curious to see how The Matrix, who I really do think are an interesting comparison to Muse, how they, and if they, choose to do a Muse and just sort of paper over all the fucking shit that they unleashed in society with some of their storytelling. But yeah, it's a hurdle I can't clear with the band. And as one last final gasp to knock you off your course before we go to the break and the end of part one, Matt Bellamy is a keen scuba diver and claims that on one particular scuba excursion, an instructor tried to kill him by only filling his oxygen tank halfway because he fancied Matt's girlfriend.
I did not know that story. I did not know that story. But I mean, I think if you're as paranoid as he is, it doesn't surprise me. And I think, in a way, the hardening of his opinions matches Muse's success, right? So he, if, as Fran, suggests, he was a loner in a bedroom, even though, as remember, guys, he played sports and he had girlfriends. The more famous you are, the more yes men and women you have around you. You have people challenging you-ness, and we're in an age where it's so easy, for even right-thinking people to be radicalized. Like, only today I saw this very interesting video about how if you engage with transphobic content on TikTok, basically within 2 hours, you're in fascist TikTok because of the interaction. Like, it's easy for all of us to kind of form these more extreme opinions. So it doesn't surprise me that he's become like that as he becomes more and more privileged and more detached from, the young guys getting drunk in Teignmouth. So, it's sad. But I don't know. I think because I've been so detached, I used to read everything. I used to have... I did this for Radiohead as well, collages of them on my bedroom wall. The fall was really hard, from Grace. I felt very betrayed. So, yeah, I think I've already handled so much betrayal. I can't, my brain can't handle also thinking about the ramifications of Muse radicalizing the world. But
see what you're saying about TikTok. That's really interesting, because that is the effect of the algorithm, and that's well documented on Facebook. It's even more well documented on YouTube, by the way. I think YouTube steers you to the right and steers you to the far right, and that's not because the algorithm is a malign thing. It's because it's profit driven and it's click driven. But it is a malign thing as well, because it's not neutral. It's like... Well, the algorithm is neutral. This is the thing.
No,
the algorithm is...
No, it's really not.
Oh, no. See, we're going to disagree here. The algorithm is neutral. The algorithm is a non-sentient thing. The algorithm is... What it's doing is reflecting back...
Precisely. So it's not neutral because humans aren't neutral.
Humans aren't neutral. The algorithm is.
There's a deeper thing behind that, and it was in the book I read, which Weapons of Math Destruction, is that the algorithm reflects its creator.
That's why it will go racist and sexist in no time because unfortunately that's the human experience.
But that's because that generates the most interaction. So algorithms are click driven, and click driven means effectively money driven because it's so. And certainly in the terms of YouTube, it's run by advertisers. The clicks equate to dollars. And I think one of the things that I'm noticing with Muse, and I don't mean to get too Nick Bostrom about it, but maybe Muse are just a simulation and an algorithm because they seem to be a band, as you say, whose opinions have hardened along with their success. But what that could also be seen as is their opinions have gravitated towards the thing that leads to the most clicks, the most interactions, the most dollars. And so the more Muse talk about this fucking mumbo jumbo, this sci-fi conspiratorial globalist garbage, the more money they get, the more rewarded they get. And so a bit like an algorithm, without implying any malign intent on Matt Bellamy's part, between him, the bandmates, their management, their label, the entire PR superstructure that exists around that band, the whole thing is slowly drifting towards where the money is. And that seems to be, like the YouTube thing. There's no intent to go in a sinister direction there. There's nobody sitting there going, I'm a neo-Nazi and I really want to use this to try and get more neo-Nazis made. It's simply that human nature, the fascination with the macabre and the dark, and the fact that the right wing are more engaged online seems to draw people that way. And, as I said, I mean, I'm not holding myself above that. When I was young, I was very fascinated by some of this stuff as well. I was very fascinated by conspiracy theories and that. And it does generate money. It simply does.
So do you think that David Icke will be supporting them on the next tour, or
by the way,
are we going that direction?
The only problem is they wouldn't be able to announce the venue because David Icke's new tactic is that he says he's playing a city, but he can only tell his audience the day of the show so that people don't turn up and try and shut the concert down.
I feel sorry for the other members, like Dom and Chris on board.
Where are they on this?
Are they just going along for the ride, thinking, okay, Matt, you say that, we're just getting the money and play bass and drums?
That is interesting though, right? I mean, it is like, okay, they're getting well paid, but are they never like, wait a minute, what did you just say? Did they, wait a minute, run that, what was that lyric again? But here's another thing, apparently Matt Bellamy doesn't allow any of his band members to be in the studio when he's doing his vocals. He won't allow anyone, even in his own band, since the very, very start of the band, he will not allow them to hear the naked audio vocal takes. He only lets them hear it after they're recorded, after they're comped, and after they're processed. And then the band can hear the vocal. He doesn't like them hearing it raw. That's
interesting because I think he's someone, I'm trying to think who else is like this, maybe PJ Harvey, we were talking about her earlier, who is simultaneously strong but fragile because he can go so high and so low. I guess to get into that mind frame, he must need to be alone. That makes sense to me.
To go out on a limb, I agree. I think it makes sense as well. To go out on a limb like that, to take a chance with your vocal and risk looking stupid 9 takes out of 10. Yeah, I can get that. But maybe the band, the other members of the band, aren't actually that aware. But you'd think by this point enough concerns have been raised.
I mean, they're friends from school, right? So it's just like, Matt, it might be like, he's always had his opinions, and they're happy to be passive about it. I don't know.
We all have that anti-vaxxer friend that we just can't quite delete yet.
I think.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Especially if he's made us all millionaires.
Yeah, what is his vaccination views? Is he going down the line of Ian Brown and Richard Ashcroft? It'd be interesting to see when they tour next.
Eric Clapton and Van Morrison. Maybe Muse will put out an anti-vax single. Yeah.
For me, see, it comes back, the lyrics thing comes back to probably the idea. So they're all, even though they are sort of vaguely anti-authority, they're so fucking, they are so deliberately vague, I think, because they can appeal to anybody, I don't think there's a malign intent when he's writing that kind of shit. Otherwise, band members would probably say something to him because they would be hearing a lot of that shit in practice before he even gets to the recording studio. You know what I mean? And picking up bits of it, as we all do when we're in bands. You know what I mean? You hear what other people are saying.
And as we all know, bands are a very self-policing setup. There's very few musicians get away with bad behaviour.
I was going to say
their bandmates.
I was like, I don't trust in other members. They're just like, just let him be. Let me play my lovely bass line.
Remember that time all the members of Lost Prophets and Brand New intervened?
Exactly.
They saw nothing. Like
I'm saying, I think it's so. I think that the message that becomes attached to the lyrics is obviously in the eye of the people that are listening to it because I think they're just so hollow and vacuous for the most part. You know, I don't know if he's taking it completely seriously, but sure as shit his fans are. You know what I mean?
Well, who are Muse fans these days? Because obviously, you know, I don't know any teenagers who listen to Muse. I assume that they're mostly in their 30s, aren't they? They've gone along with the ride.
Yeah, their streaming stats on their new stuff doesn't suggest that there's as many as there used to be either, so it will be interesting to try and get to the root of that. That's maybe something we should discuss in the next episode then, because we're going to go through the back catalogue. We're obviously going to talk about Origin of Symmetry. We're going to have a spin at the Nexus. So yeah, there's a lot to get our teeth into. I just wanted to spend most of this one trying my damnedest to pull the rug out from under you. So.
but like I said, you know, you haven't, because what I think about Muse musically is very different to what I think about them societally. So I think the next one might be a bit more contentious.
Did you assume that we're big Muse fans all the way, Chris?
I was simply curious to meet learned, thoughtful, introspective folks who are still willing to go out on a limb for this band.
Yeah, I'm not going to tear down my Muse posters after this podcast. I never had any.
I had them.
Get the Matt Bellamy tattoo lasered off after this. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us this week. Join us next week as we talk about the band's back catalogue, which I'm sure will be a lot of fun, and of course the Origin of Symmetry itself, and then of course the Nexus. It's going to be great.